Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. The night stretched on, and as the last guests at the gala mingled and danced, Sophia stood by the edge of the ballroom, trying to blend in. Her second-hand dress, once something she had hoped would look elegant, now felt out of place in the sea of glimmering gowns and sharp suits. She glanced over at Liam, who was still by the deck, standing alone, seemingly lost in his thoughts. It was strange. She had barely known him, yet the simple conversation they shared had made her feel different, more alive. She told herself she should leave, but something pulled her back to him, a curiosity, a spark she couldn't ignore. After a few moments of hesitation, she made her way toward him. The cool breeze from the bay swept her hair back as she approached, her heart pounding in her chest. When he turned to look at her, the familiar look of surprise crossed his face. It was the same reaction she had gotten when she first introduced herself, but this time, it was tinged with something else, perhaps a little hope. A little openness. "Hey, I hope I'm not bothering you," she said with a soft smile, stepping closer. "I just realized I never got to thank you properly for not running away when I mistook you for someone else." Her voice was light, playful, as she tried to shake off the awkwardness she felt. She could sense him relax a bit, and it gave her courage to continue. He chuckled, the sound soft and genuine. "No worries. Honestly, I don't mind at all. It's been a while since I've had such an interesting conversation." He paused, his gaze lingering on her for a moment. "I'm glad you came back." Sophia blinked, her breath catching slightly at the unexpected honesty in his words. It wasn't the kind of thing she was used to hearing from men like him. People who had it all seemed to hide behind facades, especially in places like this. "Well, I was starting to think I'd just wander around the harbor until I bumped into someone else I mistakenly thought was Kevin," she joked, trying to keep things light. She wasn't sure why, but being around him felt different. Not like the usual small talk and forced smiles she was used to, but real. And maybe that's why she couldn't stop talking. Liam's lips curled into a faint smile, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "I don't think I'd mind bumping into you again," he said quietly. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, making her heart race. For a moment, they just stood there, the sound of the party a distant hum behind them. Sophia glanced out at the water, the moonlight reflecting off its surface. It was peaceful, in a way, and for the first time that night, she didn't feel so alone. "So, what's the story with you?" she asked, her curiosity bubbling up once again. "You seem like you've seen the world, but you're not exactly living the life of a typical billionaire. At least, not from what I've seen so far." Liam took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair, and his gaze turned away from her, lost in the distance. "Maybe I'm not your typical billionaire," he said, his voice low. "Maybe I never wanted to be. But life's complicated. It's easier to be the guy who has it all, who keeps everyone at arm's length." He looked at her again, his expression shifting, as though he was debating whether to say more. Sophia raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his words. "And why would you want to do that?" she asked softly, sensing there was more to his story. Liam hesitated before answering, his eyes meeting hers with a raw honesty she hadn't expected. "Because, sometimes, it's safer to keep people away. The more you care, the more you risk losing." He paused, his lips pressing together as though he was battling with his own emotions. "It's easier not to care." Sophia felt a pang in her chest as she watched him struggle with his words. There was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that mirrored her own feelings of doubt and fear. She had always believed that money solved everything, but standing here, listening to Liam speak so honestly, she realized that perhaps it wasn't the answer to everything after all. "You don't have to keep people away," she said quietly, her voice soft but firm. "Not everyone is going to hurt you." She wasn't sure where the words came from, but as soon as they left her lips, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't had before. She wasn't just talking to him. She was talking to herself too. He turned to her, his gaze searching hers, as though trying to understand what she meant. For a moment, the world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet space between them. "You're different," he said finally, almost as though he were speaking more to himself than to her. "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you." Before Sophia could respond, a voice called out from behind them, pulling her attention away. It was the event organizer, reminding everyone that the last round of drinks was being served inside. The moment was broken, but not entirely lost. "Guess we should get back," Sophia said, her voice more grounded than it had been when she first stepped onto the deck. But as they turned to walk back into the gala, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. Something unspoken, yet powerful. The night was far from over, but for Sophia, it felt like the beginning of something new. A connection that neither of them had expected, but one that would change their lives forever. And in that quiet, fleeting moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had just stumbled upon something worth fighting for. The night had ended, but the questions lingered in Sophia's mind as she walked back to her small apartment. The party had been a whirlwind of elegant conversation and fake smiles, but it was the moments with Liam that stayed with her. She had barely known him, yet she felt like she'd shared something real, something raw, underneath the pretense of the event. She couldn't stop thinking about his words. "It's easier not to care." She wondered what had made him so closed off, so distant. But she also wondered if that was something she could help him with. The next few days passed in a blur. Sophia returned to her daily routine, working long hours at the cafe, her mind constantly drifting back to the gala. And Liam. She hadn't expected to feel so connected to someone like him, especially considering their different worlds. He was rich, powerful, and surrounded by luxury. She was struggling to make ends meet, living in a cramped apartment with peeling walls and a barely working heater. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, his quiet intensity, the way he listened, the way he opened up to her in a way no one ever had before. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Liam than he let on. Maybe, just maybe, she could help him. She knew how it felt to hide from the world, to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. It was what she did every day, just to survive. But for the first time in a long time, she wondered if she could do more than just survive. She could help someone else, maybe even find a way to heal herself along the way. That Friday evening, as Sophia closed up the cafe, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Liam. "Hey, would you like to grab coffee sometime this weekend? Maybe we can talk some more about everything." Her heart skipped a beat as she read the message. Was he really asking her out? It seemed too easy, too sudden, but it also felt right. She typed back quickly, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'd love to." There was no turning back now. The weekend came, and they met at a quiet cafe near the park. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the sidewalk. Liam was already there when Sophia arrived, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee in front of him. He stood up when he saw her, his smile warm, though his eyes still carried that familiar weight of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. "Hey," he said, his voice light, almost teasing. "You actually showed up. I thought I might have scared you off with my brooding billionaire routine." Sophia laughed, feeling a sense of ease she hadn't expected. "No, I'm still here. And you're not as brooding as you think." They sat down, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was an odd silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if they were both waiting for something, to say the right thing, to make the right move. Finally, Liam broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, his voice more serious now. "About not caring. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was just easier to think that way. But after the gala, I started questioning it." He looked at her, his eyes intense, searching. "You make me question a lot of things, Sophia. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing." Sophia swallowed hard, trying to hold back the emotions that threatened to spill over. She wasn't sure if he was confessing something deeper or just trying to make sense of what they were both feeling. But she didn't want to complicate things. "Not yet. Maybe it's a good thing," she said softly. "Maybe it's okay to question everything. To look at things from a different perspective. I mean, you've spent so much time building this empire of yours. But what's the point if you're not happy?" She didn't mean to say it like that, but the words were out, and she couldn't take them back now. Liam sat back, his expression unreadable for a moment. The silence between them was thick, like a storm waiting to break. But then, slowly he smiled. It was small at first, but it grew into something genuine. "You're right. he said, his voice low. Maybe it's time I stopped hiding from the world. Maybe it's time I start living again. Not just for my business or my legacy, but for me. He paused, his gaze softening. And maybe for you, too. Sophia's heart skipped again, but this time, it wasn't with anxiety. It was with something else. Something deeper, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. But at that moment, sitting across from him, the idea of opening herself up didn't feel so scary. Maybe, she said quietly, you're not as alone as you think you are. The connection between them, once tentative and uncertain, was now undeniable. They had begun this journey as strangers, both hiding pieces of themselves. But now, they were starting to find those pieces in each other. And as the afternoon wore on, and the cafe slowly emptied, neither of them seemed to care about the world outside. All that mattered was the promise of something real between them, something worth exploring, together. And for the first time in a long while, Sophia felt like she wasn't just surviving. She was living. The next few weeks passed in a blur for Sophia. Life continued as usual with her juggling the long shifts at the cafe and her dreams of becoming an artist. But something had shifted inside her. After her coffee date with Liam, she couldn't help but notice the difference in the way she looked at the world. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to live. And it wasn't just because of Liam, though he had certainly played a role. It was something deeper, something she hadn't realized she was missing. She was beginning to believe that she could have a life that was more than just getting by. She could have something real. But Liam had become something more than just a man she met at a gala. Over the next few weeks, they began to spend more time together, talking about everything and nothing. They met for coffee when she had time between shifts, and on weekends, he took her to art galleries or quiet spots around the city, places she never would have visited on her own. He always seemed to be genuinely interested in what she had to say, and the way he listened made her feel like her words mattered. They were still figuring each other out, taking things slowly. There were moments of hesitation, of doubts, but it was clear to both of them that something had changed. Liam, the man who had once closed himself off from the world, was slowly letting her in, piece by piece. He talked about his past, the struggles he faced growing up, and the walls he had built around himself to protect his heart. For the first time, Sophia understood him on a deeper level. One evening, after a long day at the cafe, Sophia received a text from Liam. It was short, but it made her heart skip. Meet me at the beach. I need to show you something. She smiled to herself, already guessing it was something important. They hadn't spent much time by the ocean since the night of the gala, and she knew it had a special meaning for him. She quickly texted back, I'll be there in 30 minutes. The excitement in her chest was unmistakable. When she arrived at the beach, Liam was standing at the water's edge, his hands shoved into his pockets. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his face breaking into that familiar, soft smile that always made her feel like she was the only one in the room. You came, he said, his voice almost a whisper. There was something different in his tone, something more vulnerable. Sophia walked over to him, her heart racing. Of course I did. What's going on? You said you needed to show me something. Liam nodded, his expression serious. I've been thinking a lot about what we've talked about how I've been living my life. I've been running from things, from my past, from myself. But being with you, talking with you, it's made me realize that I don't want to keep running anymore. He paused for a moment, and Sophia felt a shift in the air, as though the weight of his words were sinking in. He took a deep breath before continuing. I've been stuck in this bubble, trying to be the person everyone expects me to be. But you've helped me see that it's okay to let that go. I don't have to keep pretending. And I want to share that with you. I want you to be a part of my life, not just as someone I spend time with, but as someone I care about deeply. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as his words washed over her. She wasn't sure how to respond at first, her mind spinning with the intensity of what he had just said. She had never expected him to be so open, so raw. It felt like he was finally breaking down the walls he had built around himself, and she could feel herself falling even more for him. Liam, she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. I care about you too, more than I ever thought I would. But I don't want you to think that you have to be anything other than yourself with me. I don't need the billionaire or the CEO, I just need you. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his, a quiet smile playing at the corners of his lips. Then that's exactly who I'm going to be. He squeezed her hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, They stood there together, not as two people from different worlds, but as two people who had found something worth holding on to. As the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the silence, they stood side by side, letting the moment stretch on, not needing words to fill the space between them. In that peaceful stillness, Sophia realized that this was the beginning of something real. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't alone anymore. "This feels right," she whispered, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. Liam nodded, his voice barely audible. "It does." The ocean stretched out before them, vast and endless, and for the first time, neither of them felt lost. They had found something worth fighting for. The weeks that followed felt like a dream for Sophia. The connection with Liam grew deeper, and she found herself opening up in ways she had never imagined. He had broken through the walls she had spent so many years building around her heart, and now, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like an outsider in her own life. Every weekend, they spent time together, discovering new places, new experiences, and most importantly, a new version of themselves. He had become her anchor, and she had become his. But not everything was perfect. Despite their growing bond, there were still moments when the reality of their differences loomed over them. Sophia had her own fears that things might not last, that she might not fit into his world of wealth and power. And for Liam, there were days when his past, the life he had built, seemed to be pulling him back into old habits. But they always found their way back to each other. They communicated, they worked through their doubts, and each time, they came out stronger. One evening, Liam invited Sophia to an event at one of his company's galas, a celebration for the launch of a new product. It was a glamorous event, full of people from the upper echelons of society, and Sophia couldn't help but feel out of place. She had never been to something like this before, and the grandeur of the venue overwhelmed her. But Liam, ever calm and composed, reassured her as they arrived. "You're going to be fine," he said, his hand gently resting on her back. "You belong here, Sophia. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." His words were kind, but she could still see the worry in his eyes. He knew how different this world was from hers, and he wanted her to feel comfortable, to feel like she was truly part of his life. As they entered the grand hall, Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of anxiety creep over her. The chandeliers glittered above them, and the guests were all dressed in elegant gowns and tailored suits. She was just a waitress, just a small-town girl with big dreams. How could she possibly belong in this world of wealth and status? But Liam's hand on her arm grounded her, reminding her that this wasn't about fitting in, it was about being herself. They made their way through the crowd, and as they did, Sophia couldn't help but notice the way people looked at them. Some seemed curious, others envious, but no one seemed welcoming. It was the first time she had felt like she was in a completely different world, and it made her question everything. Her place in Liam's life, her ability to stand beside him in this high society world. Liam seemed to sense her unease. "Hey," he said softly, guiding her to the edge of the room where they could be alone for a moment. "I know this is overwhelming, but you have to know something. None of this matters. What matters is what we have. What matters is how we feel when we're together." He took her hands in his gaze steady and sincere. "And I want you here, with me. I need you to be a part of my life, no matter where we are, no matter who's watching." His words brought her back to the present, and as she looked into his eyes, she realized just how much he had come to mean to her. It wasn't about the gala, the fancy clothes, or the prestigious guests. It was about them, about the connection they had built. She had been afraid of this world, but now she realized it wasn't as intimidating as she had once thought, not when he was by her side. "I'm not used to this," she admitted, a small laugh escaping her lips. "But I want to be with you. I don't want to let anything scare me away from what we have." Liam smiled, his thumb gently brushing against her hand. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together, okay?" As the night went on, Sophia found herself relaxing more, the anxiety that had gripped her at the beginning slowly melting away. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid to take it. She could see herself walking beside Liam, not as a stranger in his world, but as an equal, and that thought gave her a sense of peace she hadn't known she needed. Later, as the gala drew to a close and the guests began to filter out, Liam led her outside to the balcony, where the night air was cool and refreshing. The city lights sparkled in the distance, and the quiet hum of the night seemed to wrap around them, creating a moment of serenity amidst the chaos. "You know," Liam said, his voice soft, "I used to think I had everything figured out. But the more I'm with you, the more I realize how little I knew. You've shown me a side of life I never even considered." He turned to her, his expression serious yet tender. "You've made me want to be better, for myself, for us." Sophia smiled, her heart swelling at his words. She had always believed in the power of change, of growth, but hearing him say it made her realize just how much they had both changed. Maybe they had started out as two people from different worlds, but now they were creating their own world together. And that, she thought, was all that truly mattered. "I think we're both learning," she said softly, taking his hand. "And I think that's a good thing." As they stood together, watching the city below, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And with Liam by her side, she felt ready to take on the world. The following week brought a change in the air, both in the city and in their relationship. As much as Sophia and Liam had begun to find their rhythm together, the realities of their differing worlds still lingered, just beneath the surface. Sophia had always lived with the weight of financial stress, constantly balancing what seemed like an endless number of obligations. Liam, on the other hand, had the resources to remove obstacles in his path, a stark contrast to her everyday struggles. And though they both had made strides toward understanding each other, there was still an unspoken tension that neither could ignore. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the tension finally broke. Sophia had been invited by Liam to visit a new art exhibit in town. It was supposed to be a casual day, something to enjoy after a week of hectic work. But as she arrived at his penthouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Liam greeted her at the door with his usual smile, but there was a distance in his eyes that made her pause. "Hey, you're here," Liam said, stepping aside to let her in. "I'm glad you could make it. I think you'll really like the exhibit." Sophia nodded, forcing a smile. "Thanks for inviting me. I've been looking forward to it." But there was something else in her voice, a slight edge of uncertainty. She couldn't pinpoint it, but she knew something was bothering him. As they made their way to the exhibit, the awkward silence between them grew. It wasn't the comfortable silence they had shared before, the one where no words were necessary. This was different, filled with tension and unspoken thoughts. Sophia decided to break it. "Liam, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but direct. "You've seemed distant lately. I don't know if I've done something wrong, but I just want to know if something's going on." Liam hesitated, running a hand through his hair, his eyes darting away from her gaze. "It's not you, Sophia," he said, his voice low. "I just have a lot on my mind. You know how things can get with business. The pressure, the expectations, it's all a bit much sometimes." Sophia frowned, her heart sinking slightly. "I understand that. But you've been shutting me out. We promised we'd be honest with each other, Liam. I'm here for you. I don't want to feel like I'm the last person you turn to." Liam looked at her then, his eyes softening as he realized the weight of his words. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been holding back. Not because of you, but because I don't know how to let someone in. I've spent my whole life pushing people away, thinking it was easier that way. But with you, it's different." The words were a relief, but they also stung. She had seen him struggle with opening up, but hearing him admit it made her realize just how deeply those walls ran. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. All she could do was reach for his hand and hold it gently. "I want to be there for you," she said softly. "I want to help you, not just with the big things, but with everything. We're in this together, Liam. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be you." Liam exhaled slowly, as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. "Thank you, Sophia. I know I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm trying. And I don't want to lose you. I don't want to keep running anymore." They spent the rest of the day at the art exhibit, the tension between them slowly melting away with each conversation. The gallery was filled with vibrant colors and abstract shapes that seemed to mirror the chaos and beauty of their own lives. They discussed the pieces, laughed at some, and stood in silence in front of others, letting the art speak for itself. As they left the gallery later that afternoon, the city was bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Sophia felt lighter, as if they had taken another step forward, not just in their relationship, but in understanding each other. Liam had let her in, and for the first time in a long while, she could see the man beneath the mask of the billionaire CEO. "Thank you for today," she said as they walked back to the car. "I needed this." Liam smiled, his eyes warm. "I did too," he replied. "I think we're starting to figure this out, piece by piece." As they drove through the city, their hands found each other, the warmth of their touch grounding them in the present. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they both felt ready to face it, together. The days following their conversation were a turning point for both Liam and Sophia. The walls that had once separated them, his guarded heart and her insecurities, began to crumble. They spent more time together, each day bringing them closer as they learned more about each other's fears, dreams, and desires. But despite the progress they were making, there was still one thing that weighed heavily on both of them: the reality of their different worlds. Sophia couldn't help but feel that she was always a step behind, while Liam seemed to move effortlessly through a world of wealth and power. It was a Friday evening when the reality of those differences hit Sophia squarely in the chest. She had been invited to a business gala, an event Liam had been telling her about for weeks. It was a high-profile event, attended by CEOs, investors, and the elite of the business world. Sophia wasn't sure if she should go. Part of her was excited about being part of Liam's world, but another part of her felt like an imposter, unsure of how to navigate this unfamiliar terrain. She had barely enough time to get ready after her shift at the cafe, and when she arrived at the venue, the grandeur of the event almost knocked the wind out of her. The hotel lobby was lined with marble columns, and the air was thick with the perfume of wealth. People in tailored suits and elegant gowns mingled, their conversations hushed but intense. Sophia, in her modest dress, suddenly felt very small. She spotted Liam across the room, looking every bit the powerful, confident man she had come to admire. But even as her heart swelled with affection for him, she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. "Hey," Liam greeted, walking over to her with that familiar, easy smile that always made her feel like everything would be okay. But even as he took her hand, she could feel the distance between them, an invisible line drawn by the differences in their worlds. "You look amazing," he said, his eyes lighting up as they met hers. "I'm glad you made it. I know this can be overwhelming, but just remember, you belong here. You're with me." She smiled back, but her smile felt tight, like a mask she was wearing to hide her nerves. "Thanks. It's just, I don't know how to act here. This world is so different from mine. I'm used to the cafe, not this. She waved her hand around, gesturing to the crowd, the marble floors, the glittering chandeliers. Liam's gaze softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. "I understand. But you're here because I want you here. Not because you're pretending to be someone else, but because you're you. And that's all that matters to me." They spent the evening together, talking with some of Liam's business associates and making small talk with the other guests. Sophia was surprised to find that, despite the wealth surrounding her, she was able to hold her own. Liam introduced her as his guest, and while she felt awkward at times, there were moments when she realized that, in Liam's eyes, she was just as important as anyone else in the room. But as the night wore on, Sophia began to notice something she hadn't before. Liam seemed more distant, less engaged with the people around him. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a quiet tension that only she seemed to pick up on. At one point, they were standing by the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. Liam hadn't said a word for several minutes, and Sophia could feel his unease. "Liam, what's going on?" she asked softly, stepping closer to him. "You've been distant all night. Are you okay?" He turned to her, his expression conflicted. For a moment, he said nothing, just looking at her with that familiar intensity. Then, finally, he spoke. "I don't know. I've been trying to push all this business stuff aside for a while now, but it's hard to ignore. It's like, no matter how far I get from it, it always pulls me back in. I don't want to drag you into this world. I know it's not where you belong, but I also know that I can't do this without you. I'm scared, Sophia. Scared that if we keep going like this, we're just going to keep drifting apart." Sophia felt her heart ache as she listened to him. She understood his fears. She had her own. But she knew one thing for sure. She didn't want to lose him, not over their differences. "Liam," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "I'm not going anywhere. I don't care about the wealth or the business. What matters is you. It always has been. She took his hand in both of hers, looking up at him with sincerity in her eyes. We're a team. You and me. And we'll figure this out together. No matter where life takes us. For the first time that evening, a sense of peace seemed to settle over Liam's face. He smiled, though it was a little hesitant, as though he wasn't quite sure he deserved her reassurance. Thank you, he whispered, leaning in to kiss her forehead. You have no idea how much that means to me. The night ended quietly, but something had shifted. They didn't have all the answers, and they knew their journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, they both understood that they could face whatever came next, together. The days that followed the gala were filled with a newfound sense of clarity for both Liam and Sophia. They had faced the tension head-on, and for the first time, they both felt like they could breathe again. The weight of their different worlds still lingered, but it didn't feel as heavy. They had spoken openly about their fears, their insecurities, and what they wanted for the future. Liam was learning to embrace the idea that he didn't have to be the perfect businessman all the time, and Sophia was realizing that she didn't have to prove herself to anyone, especially not him. Together, they were starting to carve out a space where their love could grow, despite the pressures around them. One afternoon, as they sat in the small cafe where they first met, the conversation turned to their plans for the future. They had both been so focused on their immediate feelings for each other that they hadn't really discussed what came next. It was easy to get lost in the moment, but they both knew they had to face reality eventually. What do you want, Sophia? Liam asked, his eyes soft as he watched her. What do you want from all of this? From me? Sophia took a deep breath, her heart racing. This wasn't the question she had been expecting, but it was one she had been avoiding for weeks. She had always lived her life day by day, just trying to get by. But now, with Liam, it felt like she had to think beyond the present. I want to be with you, Liam, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I want to build a life with you, but I also want to make sure I don't lose myself in it. I've spent so many years just trying to survive, and now, for the first time, I'm starting to feel like I can actually live. And I don't want to give that up. I need to keep growing, keep chasing my dreams. But I want to do it with you by my side. Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. He could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire he had come to admire. You won't lose yourself, Sophia, he said softly. I'll make sure of it. You can chase your dreams, and I'll be right there, cheering you on. I don't want to hold you back. I want to see you thrive. The sincerity in his voice made her heart swell, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly seen, not just as his girlfriend or the girl he was dating, but as Sophia, the woman with her own dreams and ambitions. Their conversation shifted to their next steps, how they would navigate their future together, balancing their dreams with the reality of their differences. They talked about the challenges they would face, the uncertainty that loomed, but there was something in the way they spoke, something in the way they looked at each other, that made them both believe they could handle whatever came their way. As they left the cafe, Liam took her hand in his grip strong and reassuring. Whatever happens next, he said, we'll face it together. You and me. Sophia smiled, her heart full. Together, she repeated softly, feeling the weight of his words sink in. In that moment, it didn't matter what the future held. They had each other, and that was enough. They walked down the street, side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. It wasn't going to be easy, but they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer alone in their journey. And that thought made all the difference. As the months passed, the relationship between Liam and Sophia grew stronger. They had faced their challenges, their differences, and their fears, and yet, they continued to build something real together. The awkwardness of their initial encounters was now a distant memory, replaced by the easy comfort of two people who had come to understand each other on a deeper level. Liam had learned that he didn't need to hide behind the walls of his success to feel worthy, and Sophia had learned that she didn't need to sacrifice her dreams or self-worth to be with someone she loved. They were a team, working side by side to create a future that they both believed in. One evening, as the city lights twinkled below, Liam took Sophia to the place where it all started, by the ocean, where they had first met. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air, and the scent of salt water lingered in the breeze. As they stood there together, side by side, the weight of everything that had happened between them began to settle in. It was hard to believe how far they had come. Sophia turned to Liam, her heart full. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd find something like this. Something real, something worth fighting for." She smiled, her eyes meeting his. "But I did. And I found it with you." Liam reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You've changed my life, Sophia," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I never knew what true happiness was until I met you. You've shown me that life isn't about the things we own or the success we chase. It's about the people we love, the connections we make." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I don't want to waste another second without you by my side." Sophia's heart raced as she looked up at him, sensing that this moment was different. There was a shift in the air, something monumental about to happen. Liam dropped to one knee, his gaze never leaving hers. "Sophia Matthews," he said, his voice steady. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them standing on that beach, in the soft glow of the moonlight. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she realized that this was it, the moment she had been waiting for. Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, her heart overflowing with love. "Yes, I will marry you." Liam smiled, relief washing over his face as he stood up and pulled her into his arms. They held each other tightly, the sound of the ocean a comforting backdrop to the most important moment of their lives. They had both come a long way, from the first hesitant steps of their relationship, filled with uncertainty and fear, to this moment of pure joy and commitment. They had fought for each other, and now they had found their forever. As they stood together on the beach, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew that whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. Because, in the end, it wasn't about wealth, success, or status. It was about love, the kind of love that made everything else fall into place. And with that, they began a new chapter of their lives, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that they had found something truly special, a love that would last a lifetime.